The old farm sat on the outskirts of a quiet village, nestled between vast fields and thick woods. For generations, it had been a place of mystery, whispered about by children and feared by adults, not because of ghosts or curses, but because of the dogs. 14 massive German shepherds roamed the land, their golden eyes gleaming like flickering torches in the dark. They weren't ordinary farm dogs. They weren't pets. They were something else, silent guardians, trained warriors, a pack with a purpose only they understood. Every child in the village was told the same thing: never go near the pack. But 8-year-old Emily had never been one to listen. She arrived at her grandfather's farm just as the summer sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. The air smelled of fresh hay, damp earth, and something wild, something untamed. Her grandfather, a tall, sturdy man with weathered hands and kind eyes, carried her suitcase inside. "You remember the rules, don't you, Emily?" he asked, his voice gruff but gentle. Emily nodded absently, but her mind was already wandering. She had heard the stories, of course. The villagers spoke of how the pack answered only to her grandfather, how they moved like shadows in the night, how no one else dared to cross their territory. She wasn't afraid. She was curious. After dinner, while her grandfather was busy in the barn, Emily slipped outside. The farm was vast and peaceful, the only sounds the distant chirping of crickets and the rustling of the wind through the wheat fields. But the air changed as she neared the edge of the property, where an old wooden fence separated the farm from a wide open field. And there they stood. 14 German shepherds, lined up in eerie silence, their muscular bodies still as statues. Their eyes, intelligent, piercing, locked onto hers the moment she stepped forward. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had expected barking, growling, maybe even one of them charging toward her. But they didn't move. They simply watched. A shiver ran down her spine. These weren't ordinary dogs. They weren't like the playful retrievers she had seen in the village. These were something else entirely, something she didn't yet understand. Then one of them took a step forward. He was bigger than the rest, his fur a deep, inky black that almost blended into the fading twilight. His shoulders rippled with power as he moved, his golden eyes locked onto her, unblinking. Emily swallowed hard. Every part of her brain told her to back away, to turn and run. But her heart, pounding wildly in her chest, told her to stay. She lifted her small hand, palm up, a hesitant gesture of trust. The other dogs shifted, their bodies tensing, as if waiting for the alpha's reaction. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Then slowly the black dog tilted his head, and Emily knew this was only the beginning. Emily's heart pounded as the black German shepherd stepped closer. The other dogs remained still, their golden eyes locked onto her every move. It felt as if time had stopped, the world shrinking until only she and the pack remained. The alpha Thor, as she would later learn, towered over her. His sleek, muscular body moved with an eerie grace, his thick fur bristling slightly in the evening breeze. He sniffed the air, analyzing her scent, searching for something unseen. Emily didn't dare move. The stories she had heard replayed in her mind. No one approached the pack. No one but Grandpa. They were too unpredictable, too powerful, trained for a purpose long forgotten by the villagers, but still embedded deep in their instincts. Yet, standing here now, Emily didn't feel fear. She felt drawn to them. The alpha took another step, closing the gap between them. His golden eyes burned with intelligence, scanning her face, her posture, her intent. She had never seen an animal think the way he did. Her fingers trembled, but she kept her hand raised, palm up, offering, not demanding. A deep growl rumbled from somewhere behind Thor. One of the younger males shifted uneasily, his ears twitching, uncertain of the stranger in their midst. Emily's breath hitched. If the pack turned against her now, there was no way out. Thor flicked his ears back, letting out a low, commanding huff. Instantly, the other dogs fell silent. The alpha had spoken. Emily swallowed, feeling a strange sense of relief. He was protecting her, or at least stopping the others from acting on instinct. Slowly, carefully, Thor lowered his massive head. His wet nose brushed against her open palm, just for a second. Then he pulled back, watching her. Emily exhaled shakily. She didn't know what had just happened, but something inside her told her she had passed the test. The pack began to shift, breaking their rigid stance. Some exchanged glances, others flicked their tails as if silently debating what to do with this small human who had dared to step into their world. For the first time, Emily saw them as individuals, not just a fearsome group. There was the scarred one with graying fur, who stood slightly apart, observing like a wise elder. The young, restless one who had growled, still tense but no longer aggressive. The massive, golden-furred female whose ears twitched every time Emily moved. And then there was Thor. Emily met his gaze again, something unspoken passing between them. He understood her. And somehow she understood him. But before she could react, a deep voice shattered the moment. "Emily, get away from them." She flinched, turning to see her grandfather striding toward her, his face a mask of shock and urgency. The pack instantly stiffened, their bodies coiling like springs, ready to defend themselves if necessary. Emily's heart sank. Had she just made a terrible mistake? Emily froze. Her grandfather's voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp and urgent. The pack responded instantly. Their playful curiosity vanished, replaced by tense alertness. Muscles coiled, ears flattened, eyes locked onto the approaching man. Thor stood in front of Emily, his towering form shielding her. His lips curled slightly, revealing just a hint of his powerful canines, not in outright aggression, but as a silent warning. Emily felt it in her bones. The pack was ready to protect her. "Emily, step back now." Her grandfather's voice was firm, but she heard something unexpected beneath it. Not just anger. Fear. Emily's eyes darted to Thor. He wasn't snarling. He wasn't lunging. His golden gaze flickered between her and her grandfather, weighing the situation like a general deciding his next move. Slowly, Emily lowered her raised hand. The moment she did, the tension shifted. The younger dogs hesitated, glancing at Thor for direction. The scared elder let out a quiet sigh through his nose, as if relieved. Emily took a step back, showing she wasn't a threat. "Good girl," her grandfather murmured, relaxing just slightly. But his eyes never left Thor. "Now come to me." Slowly. Emily turned, ready to OD. But Thor moved first. He stepped beside her, not blocking her path, but walking with her. His massive frame stayed close, his presence steady, as if silently declaring, "She is under my protection now." Emily's grandfather sucked in a breath. She reached his side, her fingers tightening around his calloused hand. She expected him to scold her, maybe even drag her inside. But instead, he stayed still, his sharp eyes scanning the pack. A silent standoff, a battle of wills between an old man and a legendary alpha. Then something unexpected happened. Thor sat down. The shift in energy was immediate. The other dogs followed suit, some lowering their heads, others stretching out their paws. The threat was gone. The moment had passed. Emily's grandfather let out a breath and muttered, almost to himself, "Well, I'll be damned." Emily's grip on his hand loosened. "Grandpa, they weren't going to hurt me." He turned to her, eyes searching hers. "How do you know that?" She hesitated, struggling to find the right words. How could she explain the feeling that had passed between her and Thor? The silent conversation, the unspoken trust. I just do," she whispered. Her grandfather studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, with a tired sigh, he ruffled her hair. "Come inside, kiddo. You've had enough excitement for one day." Emily hesitated. She turned back toward Thor, half expecting him to retreat with his pack. But he didn't. Instead, he met her gaze one last time. And then, as if making a decision that would change everything, he wagged his tail. Emily grinned. It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Emily couldn't stop thinking about Thor. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the wooden ceiling of her grandfather's farmhouse, she replayed the moment over and over, the way he had watched her, tested her, and in the end, accepted her. She should have been scared. The entire village feared those dogs. Even her grandfather, the only human they obeyed, had warned her to stay away. But she wasn't afraid. She was curious. The next morning, Emily barely touched her breakfast. As soon as her grandfather was busy tending to the fields, she slipped outside, her bare feet crunching softly against the dewy grass. She didn't need to search for the pack. They had already found her. Thor stood at the edge of the field, his golden eyes locked onto her the moment she stepped outside. Behind him, the other dogs lingered in the shadows, watching in silence. Emily's breath hitched. Would they still accept her? Or had last night been some strange, once-in-a-lifetime miracle? She took a careful step forward. The pack stiffened, their powerful bodies tense. Then Thor moved first. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He simply stepped toward her. 1, 2, 3 slow strides, then lowered himself onto his haunches, tail flicking behind him like an old king watching over his land. Emily swallowed. It was an invitation. She took another step, then another. The other dogs shifted, some glancing at Thor, waiting for his command. But the alpha remained calm, his expression unreadable. Emily stopped just a few feet away, close enough to see the subtle scars along Thor's muzzle, close enough to hear the soft huff of his breath. She hesitated for only a moment before doing what felt right. She knelt. A flicker of interest crossed Thor's eyes. The other dogs watched her closely, as if trying to figure out what kind of strange human she was. Emily stretched out her small hand, just like before. A test. Would he accept her again? For a long moment, Thor simply stared. Then slowly he leaned in. Emily barely breathed as his wet nose brushed her palm, then moved up to sniff her wrist, her sleeve, the faint traces of breakfast on her fingertips. And then he nudged her hand. A spark of warmth rushed through her. It wasn't just acceptance this time. It was trust. Emily's heart pounded with excitement. She grinned, barely able to contain herself. "Hey there," she whispered. A soft rustle passed through the pack. One of the younger dogs, lighter in color, with a white stripe down his chest, stepped closer, sniffing the air. Another followed. Emily barely noticed the wind, the distant hum of the farm. For the first time, she was part of the pack. What she didn't realize, though, was that trust came with responsibility. And soon, that responsibility would be tested. For the next few days, Emily and the pack danced around an unspoken understanding. They never approached the farmhouse, and she never crossed beyond the field without Thor's silent permission. But every morning, when the first golden rays of sunlight stretched across the land, they were there, waiting for her. Thor remained ever watchful, his presence both commanding and calm. The others followed his lead, gradually growing used to her. Some, like the golden-furred female Emily secretly named Freya, showed curiosity, inching closer each time. Others, like the scarred elder, stayed distant, wary. But the young one with the white chest stripe, whom Emily decided to call Echo, was different. He was bold, playful, reckless. And one afternoon, he nearly got her into trouble. It started with a simple game. Emily crouched low, watching Echo with wide, playful eyes, and he mirrored her stance, tail wagging. She took a small step forward. So did he. Then another. Then, like a flash of lightning, he bolted. Emily gasped, laughing as she chased after him through the open field. The other dogs perked up, some rising to their feet, intrigued. Even Thor lifted his head, his golden gaze locked onto the scene. Echo dashed ahead, zigzagging like a shadow through the tall grass. Emily pushed herself faster, her feet light against the earth. She felt wild, free, alive. But then, a deep guttural bark. Not from Echo, not from any of the dogs near her. It came from Thor. The instant the sharp command rang through the air, Echo skidded to a halt. His ears flattened, his playful energy vanishing in a blink. Emily stumbled to a stop, panting, her laughter dying in her throat. Thor had risen to his full towering height, his eyes no longer warm but sharp, alert. The pack mirrored his stance, ears pricked, tails stiff, muscles coiled. Something had changed. Emily turned, her excitement fading into confusion. "What's wrong?" she whispered. The wind had shifted. It carried something new, something strange. A scent only the dogs could detect. Thor let out a low growl, his lips curling slightly. Freya's hackles rose. Echo, despite his youth, lowered himself to the ground, his body tense. Emily felt her heart quicken. She wasn't sure why, but suddenly, the field didn't feel as safe as it had a moment ago. Then, in the distance, a sharp sound, a snap, a broken branch, a footstep. Emily whipped her head toward the woods beyond the field, her breath catching. Someone was there. The pack had sensed it before she even realized. Thor stepped forward, his stance protective, his growl growing deeper, more dangerous. The others closed ranks, forming a tight-knit wall around Emily. She swallowed hard. Something, or someone, was watching them. And for the first time, she realized the pack wasn't feared just because of their strength. They were feared because they had enemies. The air felt heavier. Emily's skin prickled as she followed the pack's gaze toward the dark line of trees beyond the field. Something, or someone, was hiding there. Thor remained as still as stone, his ears pricked forward, his golden eyes locked onto the woods. The other dogs followed his lead, their bodies tense, their muscles coiled. Even Echo, usually so eager to play, stayed low, his youthful energy replaced by something more primal. Emily's fingers curled into the fabric of her shirt. "What is it?" she whispered. Thor let out a deep warning growl. It wasn't for her. It was for whoever, or whatever, was out there. The wind shifted again, carrying an unfamiliar scent. Emily's nose couldn't detect it, but the dogs could. Their expressions darkened. Then a movement. A shadow flickered between the trees. Just a glimpse. Too fast to make out, too distant to tell if it was human or animal. But it was there, watching, waiting. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Thor's growl grew louder, his lips peeling back just enough to flash his sharp teeth. The others followed suit, standing in formation ready. And then, a voice. A low, gruff chuckle drifted from the woods. "Still guarding the old man's land, I see." Emily's stomach clenched. She turned toward Thor, but he didn't look at her. His entire focus remained on the unseen stranger. His body language changed, not just defensive, but possessive. He wasn't just protecting the land. He was protecting her. A slow rustling of leaves. Another step. Whoever was out there wasn't afraid. They were testing the waters, seeing how close they could get. Then the voice spoke again, sharper this time. "I'll be back. And next time, I won't be alone." A long pause. Then, retreating footsteps. Emily held her breath as the presence faded, swallowed by the forest. The pack stayed still, their ears twitching, listening long after the intruder had gone. Only when the wind carried no more danger did Thor finally relax. Emily exhaled, her heart still hammering against her ribs. "Grandpa needs to know about this." Thor let out a short huff as if agreeing. But as Emily turned toward the farmhouse, something clicked in her mind. The stranger's words, "still guarding the old man's land." Who was he? And what did he want? She looked at Thor again, this time with new eyes. These weren't just farm dogs. This wasn't just a pack. They were warriors, guardians. And whatever danger was coming, they were ready. This part deepens the mystery while keeping the suspense high and reinforcing. Emily ran back to the farmhouse, her heart pounding like a drum. The stranger's words echoed in her mind. "I'll be back. And next time, I won't be alone." Who was he? What did he want? And why had Thor reacted with such intensity? She burst through the front door, her breath ragged. "Grandpa!" Her grandfather looked up from his chair by the window, his lined face hardening the moment he saw her expression. He set his coffee cup down with a deliberate slowness. What happened? Emily hesitated, her pulse still racing. "There was someone in the woods," she said, trying to steady her voice. He knew about the pack. He called them, "your dogs." A long silence filled the space between them. Her grandfather's jaw tightened. He turned his gaze to the window, where the sun was beginning to dip below the treetops. The golden light stretched across the land, touching the field where Thor and the pack still lingered, standing watch. Finally, he spoke. Did he say anything else? Emily swallowed. He said he'd be back, and he wouldn't be alone. Her grandfather let out a heavy sigh and rubbed a hand over his weathered face. I hoped this day wouldn't come. Emily frowned. You know who he is, don't you? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and walked to a tall cabinet against the far wall. Emily had never paid much attention to it before, but when her grandfather pulled open one of the drawers, she saw something unexpected inside. Old photographs, letters, and military dog tags. Her breath caught in her throat. You ever wonder why those dogs listen to me? Her grandfather asked, his voice quieter now. Emily nodded. He pulled out a faded photograph and handed it to her. She squinted at the image, a younger version of her grandfather, dressed in a military uniform, standing beside a German shepherd that looked eerily like Thor. These aren't just any dogs, Emily, he murmured. They're war dogs, trained for combat, trained to protect. He met her gaze, and some men would do anything to get their hands on them. Emily's fingers tightened around the edges of the photo. The man in the woods, he's after them. Her grandfather nodded, and he won't stop until he gets what he wants. Outside, a sharp bark cut through the evening air. Thor. Emily rushed to the window. The pack was still at the edge of the field, but now they were moving. Restless, alert. They sensed something. Emily turned back to her grandfather. We have to do something. He exhaled slowly, then gave her a small, knowing smile. We already are. He reached into the cabinet again and pulled out something else. Something small, metallic, and worn from use. A whistle. Emily's eyes widened. The battle for the pack had just begun. The night air was thick with tension. A storm brewed, not in the sky, but in the shadows beyond the field. Emily stood beside her grandfather, her hands clenched into fists. Thor and the pack remained at the edge of the farmhouse, alert, waiting. Then, in the distance, a rustle. Emily sucked in a breath. They were here. A low growl rumbled in Thor's throat. The rest of the pack tensed, their ears pricked, their eyes scanning the darkness. The enemy had arrived. A voice cut through the silence, smooth yet laced with menace. I told you I'd be back. From the tree line, 3 men stepped forward, their faces obscured by the night, but their intentions painfully clear. Behind them, several large figures moved. Dogs. But not like Thor's pack. These dogs wore thick collars, chains rattling as they were led forward, their eyes sharp with forced obedience. Emily's chest tightened. The man had brought his own pack, trained to fight. Her grandfather stepped forward, his voice steady despite the danger. You don't belong here. The leader chuckled. Neither do those dogs. You stole something that doesn't belong to you. They were never yours to take, her grandfather shot back. They earned their freedom. The man's smirk disappeared. Then I'll take them back the hard way. He snapped his fingers. The attack began. The chained dogs lunged, their handlers releasing them. They sprinted toward the farmhouse, snarling, teeth flashing in the moonlight. Emily gasped. No. But Thor moved first. With a powerful bark, he launched forward. His pack followed without hesitation, a wall of fur and muscle colliding with the oncoming attackers. The field erupted into chaos, snarls, growls, the thud of bodies colliding. Thor met the lead attack dog head-on, twisting at the last second and knocking him off balance. Freya and Echo flanked from the sides, cutting off another dog's escape. The scarred elder, despite his age, fought like a warrior, using his experience to overpower his opponent. Emily's heart pounded. The pack was outnumbered, but they weren't just fighting. They were defending. Her grandfather raised the whistle to his lips and blew, a sharp, piercing note. The pack responded instantly. Formation shift. They pushed forward in unison, working as one, forcing the attackers back. The leader of the men cursed. Fall back. Fall back. The chained dogs hesitated, sensing the shift in power. Their handlers yanked at their collars, but something had changed. They saw the difference between obedience and loyalty. One of the attack dogs stopped growling. His ears flicked back. Then, with a slow step, he turned, not toward his handler, but toward Thor. A choice. Loyalty earned, not forced. The leader snarled in frustration. Useless mutts. He turned to run, but Thor was faster. With a final deafening bark, Thor leaped forward. The man froze, staring into the golden eyes of the Alpha. A warning. Leave. Now. The men fled into the woods, dragging their remaining dogs with them. The battle was over. Emily fell to her knees, breathless. Around her, the pack stood victorious, not as soldiers, but as family. Thor walked up to her and nudged her shoulder. She looked up, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He wagged his tail. The fight for the pack had ended, but Emily knew their bond would never be broken.